Good morning, my love muffins. Reverend Sue here from All Paths to God, recording live from my own living room. Okay, we're on week 6 now of being apart, but being together in the great cosmos. Know the truth, and the truth shall set us free. We New Thoughters believe in one truth, in one God, in one presence and power greater than we are in the universe. And it doesn't matter what we call it. Quantum physics calls it energy. Esther Hicks, an inspirational speaker and author that is said to channel the intelligence of the universe, calls it source energy. The Chinese master Lao Tzu calls it the Tao, or the way. The creator of Star Wars, George Lucas, called it the Force. We call it God. But it doesn't matter what we call it. What matters is that it exists. And by whatever name we call it, there is nowhere where it ends and we begin as something separate from it. It is in us, it is us, and we are in it. So what is the nature of our relationship with it, with God? Many people think that we are born without a self, and then we build one as we go along our human life journey. Human doings in this physical world, becoming, accomplishing, achieving, and attempting to earn our worth with the divine so that we can be reunited when we leave this physical plane and merge back into the spiritual plane. But we are not born without a self. We come into the world with our divine self. We are spiritual beings living a human experience. Human beings discovering the truth of who we really are, awakening to our spiritual truth. Ernest Holmes, the founder of our church and the author of Science of Mind, said, "The Creator must clothe itself in its creation, in form, or else it would remain unexpressed." So we spiritual beings living a human experience are vessels that contain and express God life. And as such, the presence and the power of God, the love and the law of God, or the nature and the activity of God, flows to and through and as us. We are never without divine love, but we haven't been fully receiving it yet. And we are never without divine power, but we haven't been fully using it yet. God's grace is constant. God never stops being God. God never stops being good. And God never stops loving and giving. But we must open to the flow of this grace and good. Because thanks to the gift of free will, even God can't force grace and good upon us. So how do we open to the flow of grace and good? Well, we must absolutely believe in our oneness with it, in our relationship with God, right here and right now. Not when we leave the physical plane, but right here, right now, in our moment-to-moment physical human existence. And then we need to live our lives as if we believe. I refer to it as being part of the 3H club. Head, heart, hands. We have to believe with our thoughts, and we have to believe with our heart, and we have to believe with our actions. Just making false and empty affirmations or claims is not enough. If we make empty claims, they leave us feeling empty. They don't lift us. They don't unite us in the grandeur that is grace and goodness. What we believe, we receive. How we feel becomes real. How we act becomes fact. Jesus taught us this. As we believe, so shall we receive. So our relationship with God is as co-creators. Even though we are never separate from God or grace or good, we have to believe in our oneness with it in order to open to the flow of it in our lives. That's why we New Thoughters say consciousness creates and thoughts are things. So think the good ones. Well, that's something we've come to learn is easier said than done. I came across a new word this week. Well, new for me anyway. I was watching an episode of Songland on television, and they had contestants and they were introducing themselves, and somebody asked one of the contestants if they were in a relationship, and she kind of paused for a minute and she said, well, I'm not exactly in a relationship. It's more like I'm in a situationship. Well, apparently situationship is the new term for relationship without definition. Labelless relationship. You're in it, you just don't know exactly what it is. Well, this word, situationship, just immediately resonated with me as part of this spiritual journey. We have lots of situationships that interfere with our primary relationship, our relationship with God and grace and good. As a matter of fact, we're currently in a global situationship with the coronavirus pandemic. We're in it. We just don't know exactly what it is. And when we're in situationships, we go looking outside of ourselves for understanding and for definition. What is it that we're supposed to know or think? How are we supposed to feel? What are we supposed to do? And depending on what we hear, we think positively or pessimistically. And we feel good or bad. We feel hope or we feel fear. But since consciousness creates and thoughts are things, we don't want to think pessimistically. And we don't want to feel bad and feel fear. Or we'll create more of the same. But the situationship, which is so apparent and so dramatically a part of our momentary experience, seems to take command of our thoughts and our feelings and our activities. I mean, how many people have been watching TV over the last month and developed a dry cough? How could you not? How many people have speculated, do I have it? Is this a symptom? Did we catch the virus? Or did we catch the idea? Now, I'm not suggesting that we don't gather information. I am not suggesting that it's not okay to be pessimistic or to be fearful or to feel bad. Hey, they say what? It was an optimist who invented the airplane and a pessimist who invented the parachute. Both have their place, both have their goodness. To be our whole self, to be our true self, we have to be our spiritual self and our human self working in harmony. And to be our spiritual and our human self working in harmony, our human self has to work in harmony with all of its dimensions. Thus, the 3H Club. Our head, our hearts, our hands, our thoughts have to agree with our feelings, which have to agree with our activities. So we can't make pretend. We can't just bury feelings because we think they're negative and we're afraid they'll be creative. We bury them alive. We bury them with all the thought and feeling that goes with them. So no matter how hard we try to avoid them or deny them or suppress them, they still are operating in the creative law of the universe. Because when we bury our feelings, we bury them alive. So this journey is one of believing with our integrated self. Illumined souls, those prophets and sages and gurus from whom we learn so much, those that are most familiar with true nature, those with the most advanced wisdom. They don't deny human problems and challenges. Instead, they honor and glorify free will, choice, as an instrument of grace and good. So regardless of the situationship, the awakened ones maintain a relationship with truth and with God. They know only one presence, God. They know only one power, law. And they know only one situation, good. So who is the boss of us? Who is the boss of our thoughts and our feelings and our activities? Is it a situationship, or is it our relationship with truth, with God? Do we look outward to find information in order to determine what our thoughts and our feelings and our activities should be based on our sight? Or do we turn inward and determine what our thoughts and feelings and activities should be based on our vision? We don't have to stay in thought ruts. We don't have to stay in a mental path that doesn't serve us, that threatens to create more of what we don't want. We can pay our necessary and adequate attention to circumstances as they are and address them. And then we can shift our focus to that truth of our relationship with something greater than our situations. We don't have to stay in old thought ruts. Ruts don't pick us, we pick them. It always reminds me when I use the word ruts of a construction sign on the New York freeway that was under dramatic repair. And the sign said, "We're sorry for the inconvenience. Pick your rut carefully. You're going to be in it for the next 20 miles. Well, that's good advice for us. We should pick our thought ruts carefully because we're going to be in them for a while. We're going to create more that looks like them. So we need to pick our streams of thought, our paths of thought, very carefully. Consciousness creates, thoughts are things. Always according to our vision, to our 3H vision, our heads, our hearts, and our hands, will our situations be in our lives. So we have to decrease our focus on situationships and increase our focus on our relationship with truth, with God, with grace, and with good. If we want to move from our situational reality in the direction of our potential reality, we have to make this shift. We can't think of both things at the same time. We can't have situationships commanding us and relationship with God and good commanding us at the same time. It's one or the other. And as we know, the thing that gets in the way of the one, I heard it, is the other. So we want to pick the one that best serves us. Know the truth, and the truth shall set us free. Our entire spiritual practice is based on the premise that God and grace and good are at the center of everything. And so we use prayer, we use affirmations, we use our mental processes to talk ourselves into believing. 3H, believing, regardless of external situations. And when there's a shift in us, then there'll be a change outside of us. This is the law of the universe. This is the principle, the process of creation. And one of the things I loved about this church is when I first attended, the minister constantly said, don't believe us, put it to the test. Suspend disbelief, don't argue against it, but take the principles as they're taught and put them to the test in your own experience. And then see if they prove true or false. And it's quite a journey to actually put them to the test, because to believe is such a comprehensive part of our entire being. I know I had my most profound experience early in the development of all paths to God. Years and years and years ago, I had a car accident and fractured my skull and dislocated vertebrae in my neck and fractured fingers, and I developed a seizure disorder from the head injury, and I had broken a bone in my jaw. And because of everything else that was going on, and it didn't seem to hurt and it seemed to work, I didn't do anything about it. Years later, what happened is my jaw began to shift and to move. And it moved in such a way that I started to not be able to talk clearly, articulate clearly. And at the time, I was a public speaker. So it was interfering with my ability to comfortably communicate with my training participants. So I finally agreed to get the surgery done. And the surgery was very traumatic. It had to be done 3 times in a 24-hour period because my jaw kept letting loose and moving out of place, and they had it strapped down, and it was very painful. It was changed the entire look of my face. And to this day, when I look in the mirror, I don't see me as I know me. Well, I finally recovered from that. And shortly after starting the church, I started having headaches. And, you know, we believe consciousness creates. So I do believe in going to doctors and doing everything on this physical plane to attend to all our needs. And I believe consciousness creates. So I was using this power of knowing and prayer and affirmation that there too is God and the presence of good. But seemingly, no matter what I did, it did not alleviate this headache. So I finally went to my doctor and said, you have to do something. And when they took an x-ray, you could see the pins, the metal pins that they had used for the surgery had broken loose, and they were all up in my sinuses. And so the surgery needed to be repeated. Only this time they were going to have to take the metal out, and they were going to have to take bone, take a rib out, and put the rib into my face area. I was petrified to have this done after the first one being so traumatic, and I was in the waiting room just before you go into surgery, and scared and anxious, and it all of a sudden went through my mind, well, certainly don't want to go into surgery with this type of consciousness if consciousness creates. And at that precise moment, I became aware of all the people that were praying for me. My family, my congregation, my friends, and there was this sensation that went through me that was just so peaceful and so calm. So even though I was going to have this dramatic surgery, and they were going to take a rib out and put it in my face, and they were going to have to wire my mouth shut, and that was going to be like 6 weeks to 2 months, and then I was going to need a second surgery after that, I just felt this sense of rightness and calmness. So when I woke up from surgery in the recovery room, I heard the doctor calling my name. And well, that's unusual because you never wake up with a doctor in your recovery room. The doctor was there, his surgical assistant was there, my friend was there, the nurses were there. People were all around my bed. And at first I had a little pang of being frightened. And then he said, Nancy, because that's my name, Nancy, Nancy, open your mouth. And I opened and shut my mouth. It was supposed to be wired shut. And he said, when we took the metal out of your mouth, your jaw spontaneously just snapped right back to where it was supposed to be. We don't have to wire it shut. We don't have to do future surgery. It will heal in its own time and right. Well, I was still a little groggy, mind you, but it was instant proof for me that that change in the inside translated to a change in the outside. That experience couldn't have been more polar opposite than the first one that was so traumatic. And God bless them, they were wheeling me up my little bed in my room, and I was screaming at the top of my lungs at anybody who went by, oh my God, it's a miracle. God bless them, it's a miracle. This power, this sense that you are connected with something greater than you are. And if you can find that place of genuinely believing, it will outpicture in your life experiences. This is what our practice is all about. Shortly after I recovered from that, I then was diagnosed with cancer on my face. And I thought, oh my God, what kind of example am I? Consciousness creates. What must I be thinking? Well, these are just subconscious thought ruts from our entire life, from all of evolution, this consciousness of our vulnerability being greater than our consciousness of God's power to heal. I remember I had a big blowout patch on my cheek and with a dozen stitches going straight across my face. Notice when you blow up the little picture, no scar whatsoever. Again, why did that happen? How did that just disappear? Have pictures of it can show that it was an awful scar, and it should have been an awful scar, and yet it just disappeared. So even though I was feeling like, oh my goodness, I'm not walking my talk, I'm not practicing what I preach, I'm not really believing enough for it to outpicture, it did, in fact, manifest. So we persistently stay with the idea of our relationship with God and grace and good. I was so afraid that people would think me a hypocrite when I started the church, because I was very aware that while I believe this in my head, my heart and my hands, my feelings and my activities don't yet integrate fully with that. And then I realized we're all learning. We're all hypocrites. We're all very new at this. We're all discovering and unfolding. So my new saying became, as they say, as it's been said many, many times, don't stay away from church just because it's filled with hypocrites. We always have room for more. And that's what we are, this journey of believers that are shifting internally. Thoughts that we used to have that limited us to thoughts that we now believe that expand us. Most people believe thought works like a flashlight in the dark, illuminating at whatever it is aimed. But the truth is, instead of illuminating it, it creates it. Our thoughts create what they're pointed at. So the key in our practice is to predominantly think of our relationship with truth and God and grace and good, and not dwell on our situationships, not dwell on disease, not dwell on discord or disharmony or distress. Pay attention to them to the degree that we need to, and then shift our focus and maintain the majority of our focus on the truth of who we are. knowing that we are not victims of situations. We are the creators of them. So we keep our focus on relationship, not situationship. Our only real challenge then is, can we withdraw our attention from our problems long enough to nourish new thoughts, new paths of a relationship with God and grace and good? If we want the world to be a better place, we have to be a better person in it. Meaning we have to be more aligned with the truth of who we are, more focused on the presence and the power that flows to us, through us, and as us. So your mission, my friends, if you so choose to accept it this week, is relationship over situationship. There is one presence, God. There is one law. There is one power, law. And there is one situation, good. Relationship over situationship. So keep up the good work, my love muffins. We are God's very best chance at the human race. We can't go back and make a new start, but we can start now and make a new ending. We are the people. Now is the time, and this is the way. Namaste, my friends.